Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Can we all take a moment to appreciate how nice and brave that flight attendant in our first story was? Which cannot be said about the entitled mother who decided to steal food from our OP. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. You weren't eating it, so I stole it and gave it to my kid. So this just happened a few hours ago on my flight home, and I figured I'd post this while it was still fresh in my mind. EM is entitled mom, FA is flight attendant. So my flight had just taken off and they were coming around with food. Seated next to me is EM and her kid. They told the flight attendant they didn't want anything and they just got water and refused the free snacks. The flight attendant double checks to make sure they didn't want anything, and again, they refuse. I had a bit of an upset stomach at the time and knew I wasn't going to eat anything right then, but I bought some Pringles and got their free cookies with my ginger ale to snack on later. It was a 4-hour flight. Less than 10 minutes later, the kid starts whining that he wants Pringles. The EM eyes mine but doesn't say anything. Noticing her look, I quickly stash mine into a bag, thinking she'd be a decent human and not go through my stuff, before going to use the washroom. There's a little bit of a line at the back of the plane, so I'm gone for 10 minutes at the most. I come back and my bag is open on my seat, food all pulled out, and the kid is there munching on my effing food. The cookies are already gone and the kid's stuffing his face with my Pringles. Me. Excuse me, miss, but did you go into my bag and take my food? EM. You weren't eating it and my child was hungry. I didn't even hesitate before hitting the attendant button. Me. Miss, that was food that I paid for. You had no right to take it. EM. It's not like you were eating it, and you could use to lose some weight anyways. It's at this point in time that the same flight attendant that sold me the Pringles comes over and asks what the problem was. Me. I had left to use the washroom, and I came back to find this lady had gone through my bag to take the food I'd purchased out and had given it to her child. EM. No, I didn't. I purchased those. Flight attendant. Ma'am, you refused my offer for any food twice. Did you take her food? EM. She wasn't eating it. At this point in time, I lean over to the kid. Me. Hey, little man, can you do me a favor? He nodded, still stuffing his face with my Pringles. Me. Can you point to where your mom got the chips from? Immediately, he points to my bag. FA. Ma'am, you're going to have to pay her back for her chips. EM. No way. She wasn't eating them. FA. Regardless if she was eating them or not, you stole what she purchased. Either you buy her a new pack or we'll have to get police to intervene once we land. EM loses her effing mind at this, but the FA stands her ground and makes her buy me a new set of chips. She also moves me to an empty row in the back and sets me up with another packet of the free cookies and another drink. The FA then lets me know that she will be informing the police of what happened, and she was very sorry that it happened. I don't know if she wound up getting arrested once she left the plane, but I sure as hell hope I never run into her again. Jeez. For me, it isn't just that she stole something that you paid for, it's also that she rifled through your personal belongings, invading your privacy. And our second story. I do work here, but I also live here. And this isn't PetSmart, lady. Recently, I've begun a dog walking and pet sitting business that I run out of my house with express permission from my landlord. I've worked with animals for years, and I'm grateful to finally be able to do it for a halfway decent living. That being said, I've been much busier than I anticipated, and as such, I've been a little stressed about overextending myself. I even had a nightmare about forgetting that I had to watch a dog, and the dog was left alone at the house for several days. Even though it was just a nightmare, this prompted me to get more serious about my organization and scheduling so I wouldn't miss anything. Nowadays, my schedule is rock solid and I've been super on top of it. I only say that so you guys can understand the immense confusion I felt when my doorbell rang at 2 p.m. on a Monday and I heard a dog barking outside. I get my dogs calmed down and answer the door. On my doorstep is an elderly woman, maybe 80 years old, holding a very cute West Highland Terrier. For anyone not familiar, they're the dog on the Caesar dog food package. I'm honestly so confused by her being there that my mouth does not form words. I just sort of stand there, opening and closing my mouth like a fish out of water, while my brain is just screaming, "You forgot! You forgot!" After a moment, she graciously saves me from myself and talks first. I'll refer to her as LOL, or Little Old Lady. LOL. Hello, I'm Little Old Lady, and I'm here to drop my dog off for boarding. At this point, I'm almost positive that my nightmares have literally come true, and I've straight up deleted a dog from my short-term memory. But as I'm racking my brain, I cannot remember ever seeing this dog or woman before. Me. Hi, who's this little guy? LOL. This is Chico. I was hoping to leave him with you for the weekend while I visit my grandson. Okay, hoping, that's an interesting word. Now I'm less anxious but more confused. Me. Okay, have we spoken about Chico before? LOL. Oh no, but your neighbor Laura said you watch dogs, so I just brought him over. Okay, now this is making more sense. Laura was my previous neighbor who'd recently moved out, and I'd watched her dogs dozens of times, and she was always very kind to give my name out to people who were looking for dog sitters. Sometimes, however, she did treat me as on call, in the sense that she would call me as soon as she was pulling out of her driveway to tell me she was leaving for the weekend and I would need to watch the dogs. She would play it off like she was so frazzled and forgot, but it started to get old after the third or fourth time. At this point, I have a little old lady with her energetic dog on my porch, and still more questions than answers. So I invite her in while I try to get to the bottom of it. Come to find out, LOL was a friend of Laura's mother, whom I'd never met. Laura had a couple of my business cards at her house, and apparently the last time her mother was visiting, she took a couple of them to give to her friends. Apparently, Laura inherited her entitlement from her mother, as her mother told LOL I was available anytime for dog sitting. Literally anytime. Worse yet, because Laura was my next-door neighbor, Laura's mom figured out my address and gave it to LOL. Because of that behavior, LOL had the impression that I was a dog boarding facility, and she was just as confused as I was to arrive at a normal-looking house. After we got it all explained, LOL and I had a pretty big laugh about it. LOL was super apologetic and sweet, but I knew it wasn't really her fault, so there was no harm done from her. She was just a sweet old lady who got a little confused. Unfortunately, because I was already booked, I couldn't watch Chico. But good news, LOL determined she could just visit her grandson this weekend, and I went ahead and booked her for it. Chico and my dogs had plenty of time to socialize while LOL and I were chatting, and they were becoming fast friends. I think I may have just fallen backwards into a great client. Still, I was a little miffed, so I called Laura to please ask her mother to not tell people they can just come by anytime. Laura was legitimately confused as to why it was an issue. After a few minutes of going around in circles, I simply said I can't watch dogs that I don't know, and left it at that. While I wish that was the end of it, 2 days later, Wednesday, yesterday at the time of this post, Laura calls me to tell me she's just left her house and could I please watch the dogs. I gently remind her that she had just moved 3 hours away and I was no longer her neighbor. She just gave a half-hearted, "Oh," and hung up. God bless her. Something tells me that she was hoping you'd drive over anyway and watch her dogs for her. And our next story. Dumb employee is dumb. I worked at an office supply store for a while in my late 20s while finishing college. I worked mostly with younger college students and began training other employees in running the front end of the store. Our amazing manager took a better position elsewhere, and we were gifted a manager who was absolutely horrible. Let's call her Jean. She treated us so poorly that we went from over 20 employees to just 7 in the first couple of months of her taking reign. Jean was absolutely horrible, but I stood up for myself and the few remaining employees and openly expressed my disdain for her while remaining completely professional on paper. And here come annual evaluations. Jean gives me an absolutely horrible review. Since our raises were performance-based, I did not get a raise. I refused to sign and contested my evaluation, which really pissed her off. Since we only had 7 employees left, we were desperately hiring. Within a week or two, she had hired a few people and scheduled me to train them, so I did what any rational human about to quit their crappy job for a career would do. I formally asked HR for retraining due to my perceived incompetence and made it clear that I was no longer comfortable training new hires. I simultaneously began refusing to do work outside of my minimal assigned responsibilities and began moving really slowly. I made myself as competent as possible, refusing to answer customer questions via phone and forwarding all calls to her, paging her for help for stupid things, intentionally screwing up the cash register, and requesting policies for irrelevant operations. I stopped meeting quotas, and when coached, I would play dumb and pretend like I was trying my hardest. Most importantly, I started correcting customers and contractors who called her Jean and insisted her name was Jan. When she questioned me, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name well, Jan." It infuriated her. Of course, Jean was also pissed that she had to train the new employees herself. I filed a formal complaint with HR about my lack of retraining every week until they fired me. I had another job lined up, but I filed an unemployment claim anyway just to leave some extra work for her. Petty bonus. I never told her that my mom was the store's biggest buyer at the time and had been in the top 3 forever. Guests who took her business to Office Max. My very non-confrontational mother actually went into the store to request her account be closed, knowing that contract accounts have to be closed by the store manager. "Why are you closing your account?" "I'm OP's mom." She got canned about a year later, and I'd like to think I was the little match that lit the fire. Good on your mom to put the final nail in the coffin directly in her face. And our last story. There's no such thing as an allergy. I'll slip you this food to prove it to everyone. I'm allergic to fish and seafood. It's not the anaphylactic type of allergy, thank goodness, so I'm not going to die if I eat some, but I do throw up, have a stomach ache, and a massive headache for a few hours. Enough fish or seafood and I break out in small red hives over my arms. My mother didn't believe it, and as a child I couldn't stand up to her properly. She'd force me to eat stuff with seafood or fish in it to prove I wasn't allergic, then ignore me as I was sick. One day she held a dinner party. I was dressed up beautifully and trotted out to parade before the guests. At the time, I was about 9, precocious for my age and absolutely fed up with my mother making me sick. When she held out a fish cutlet, fish cooked with vegetables rolled into a ball covered in batter and fried for me to eat, I saw my chance. Me, loudly, "I can't eat that. I'm allergic to fish." Mother, "No, you're not. Eat it." Me, "I'm allergic. I'll throw up." No Asian mother will back down in front of guests for fear of looking like she can't discipline her child. My mother grabbed the fish cutlet, shoved it into my mouth, and said in her most firm voice of command, "Eat." So I ate it. Cut to about 10 minutes later. I go up to my mother and tug on her sorry to get her attention. Me, "I don't feel well." Barf. I vomited on her. On the expensive carpet and in full view of all the guests. My mother has a reputation for being a kind, generous, charitable, and very religious woman, so in front of all the guests, she couldn't do anything except act sympathetic and send me off to bed to recover. She never made me eat fish or seafood again. Well, some people can only learn from their own experience. She did learn her lesson. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.